we see that often the process doesn't work very well, and that quite a lot of manufacturing firms have had problems in making the transit towards being much more service-oriented firms. And I'm particularly aware, in the case of a computer firm that a PhD student of mine studied some years ago, a well-known computer firm, and they had been already moving into selling computer services as well as the hardware that they were selling. That's a very common move. Many computer firms have done this. But in this particular case, they discovered, it was from an outside source, they found somebody that was pioneering quite a new sort of computer service, aimed at quite a new sort of market. And they thought this was brilliant, that it was something that they could do, and they would be able to sell more of their equipment, and they would be able to sell these services to a completely new market that would be started a market in this country, become a global market. They made sales projections. They went into this. For the first year or so of the activity, everything looked great. They had a fantastic ramp up. They sold 100 or so of these systems where people bought equipment, but then what they were really buying was a lot of service delivered through the equipment. And the services were services to do with education and training and things like this. And then they discovered that this was actually something very different from what they had been used to selling. Not only was it new markets and new demands, but they had to continue to keep it, putting in the service input into this. And that meant continually putting in manpower and human resources into providing this service. It wasn't just a lot of software that people could be using by themselves. People needed continual face-to-face inputs, and they hadn't understood this. And this meant that the system went into crisis. They weren't able to expand. They weren't able to, in fact, properly maintain and keep up the systems that they'd already sold. In the course of a year, basically, from this being the great hope of the company in how it would work in the future and how it would actually move itself into being a knowledge society company servicing the knowledge society, they had to retreat dramatically back to the sorts of computer services and computer hardware retail that they had been engaged in before. And that's an extreme case. But it's not that different from the sorts of experience that many other companies have had. And we're now getting an academic literature developing around the problems here. But by coincidence, I happen to have a friend who worked in sales in this very company. So I was able to get his accounting from it as well. And he said, well, one of the big problems was we had a big sales force that were used to selling boxes. That was his terminology, boxes, computers. And they couldn't sell these sorts of services. They didn't know the market, they didn't know the people, and they didn't really know how to explain what they were selling. They didn't have the language, they didn't have the understanding. So there's a real question of skills as well. The company didn't actually have the skills to assess really the longer term business model for its new service. But it also lacked the sorts of skills for the marketing and provisioning of that particular service. And I think this is a very general issue. People need to have different skill sets to do the sales of the new services. They have to have very different skill sets to be able to design the new services as well. And in some other work we've been doing, we've been looking at new sorts of systems using information technology to support older people in their homes and people with disabilities in their homes. And we can see there's a lot of effort going in terms of improving the technologies here. There are some very good things, very good alarms, very good touch screens, all sorts of things like that. But there's a lot of trouble commercializing these products. And the real problem is that there are not the skills in designing the relevant services. And those skills mean that you have to understand, well, you have to understand old people and their needs, but you also have to understand the social care system and the healthcare systems. So, for example, who would pay for the equipment? Who would pay for the workers that will come and help you out if you've got a problem? Who will pay for the workers who would help you, provide you support on training programs, for example, if it's systems to keep you fit, exercise programs, or programs to keep you mentally alert so that you don't start becoming forgetful, losing your memory, things that happen to a lot of old people, for example. So there's a real challenge in service design here. And we need new sorts of skills that are relevant for that. And that's typically involves, there's a nasty piece of jargon, the T-shaped worker. Yes. We need people with deep understanding of very specific issues, but also who have understanding outside of the professional background, outside of the disciplinary background, of project management, very important, being able to work with people from different disciplinary backgrounds, and the sorts of knowledge that exist in the other disciplines that come to bear in providing that sort of service. So in the case I was saying, you have to know about health problems, you have to know about health services, you have to know about social services, you have to know about people's everyday life and their living patterns, for example. Will children be involved in this, for example? What happens if you have new equipment in the home? Will there be fights about who uses the television set? Things like this. These are, I'm using the example of ageing, but that sort of issue comes up again and again in services. And as we're looking at these very big global problems, like environmental problems, sustainability issues, energy security, food security, all these sorts of things, we find again and again that we need people who are not just in-depth specialists on one topic, but who have deep knowledge of one topic, but enough knowledge of a lot of other topics to work together with people in coming up with integrated solutions.
Thank you very much. Okay.